Hello and welcome to Women's Biz Podcast. I'm Annie Gibbins, founder and CEO of Women's Biz Global, and I invite you to get comfortable and listen in on candid conversations I have with fascinating women from around the globe. Business leaders, entrepreneurs, humanitarians, athletes, and a whole lot of regular people. Tune in as they let their guard down and open up on aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure success, and what they have learned along the way. These conversations aim to inspire you to embrace opportunities and possibilities beyond the limits of your imagination. Reclaim your power, strength, and vulnerability. Stand in your truth and propel yourself towards the life you dream to live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women's Biz Podcast. Always a favorite part of the week for me. I'm so delighted to be introducing you to an awesome lady today. Her name is Virginia Lacayo. She's got a Ph.D. She's a catalyst for leadership and social change and a massive co-founder, we'll call her. She steers business leaders towards systemic transformation. We're going to be talking about that. She's drawing from her expertise in mindset coaching, communication, complexity science, systemic leadership. Beyond the boardrooms, she also mentors Latin American women activists and champions social justice through her podcast, which is called Indomable, and leadership through FCAM. So we are going to talk about her whole global journey from academia to successful TV production and how she helps others have impactful change. So welcome to the program, Virginia.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Such a delight to have you join us today. And wow, what a woman. First of all, congratulations on all that you have achieved and are still achieving. Absolutely phenomenal. I'd love to dive into this whole topic of systemic change and leadership. So why do you think successful businesswomen such as yourself feel compelled to drive systemic change? All right. And how does that align with leadership today?
Well, I think let's start with two things. First, I think that there is a rise of consciousness among business leaders that understand that today, more than ever, social pressure and market pressure are the same thing. Meaning, in the United States, more than 80% of the population actually will decide to buy or not to buy a product or a service from a company based on what they perceive that company aligns or not aligns with their values and beliefs. So now the consumers are way more aware of, especially Gen Zers and millennials. I mean, they are very familiar with what we call greenwashing or rainbow capitalism, and they can spot it miles away. So if you're taking your cause and your mission and your vision and you're calling yourself a conscious brand and you're calling yourself a conscious leader, but you're really not doing the work, people will know that, know it, and they will support you or not support you based on the evidence of that. Because the market doesn't care as much of what you're saying as much as what you're doing to actually create, social justice and foster social justice and create systemic change. So that's one thing. I mean, we're talking about the context where the market is right now and where it's going. And I think that as business leaders, we need to be aware of that and position ourselves based off that. It's like where I'm positioning myself in this moment, in this historical moment and this context of the market.
Yeah.
On the other hand, answering your question too, I think that within that context, women first, people that self-identify as women, but also if on top of identify yourself as a woman, you also come from a historically marginalized group or background. I mean, you're a person of color, or you are part of the queer community, or you have some kind of disabilities, or you are an immigrant, or any of the groups that have been historically excluded, marginalized, oppressed. If you come from that, you have actually an advantage to foster systemic change and to create the conditions for a more just society. And the reason is that if you're a businesswoman at this point, you're, let's say, an executive, you're a CEO or you're a founder or you're an executive director, you already reach a level of powers and research that actually give you the opportunity to make things happen. And you add that, the consciousness that comes from being a person that experienced in their life, in their stories, oppression and discrimination in the past, you're perfectly positioned to lead systemic change, to lead change. And when I talk about systemic change, is not superficial change. It's not about, I'm going to create a DEI program. I'm going to, raise or close the gap of wages between women and men. That's important, but that's not enough. Because doing good things within the system that we have, that is a very, a system that is very influenced by what I call the big oppressive systems right now is patriarchy, white supremacy, consumerist capitalism, and religion fundamentalist. So within that system, you can do some good, but you're not changing the system unless that you're changing the system, And at this point, what we really need is to change the damn system instead of trying to compensate and keep, patching things. It's like, let's see the system as it is and let's transform it from within and from the roots. And that is possible. I've been helping hundreds of women, especially what they call themselves activists, but that includes what we call now the CEO activists, people that have some level of power and are in position of influence, and they're using their leverage, their business, their power, their influence, their research to actually tackle systemic problems. They are not superficial problems or systemic problems. So it can be done, and being a woman that comes from that kind of background give you an advantage if you are in an executive position, but you still have to develop some skills. Because unfortunately, we are socialized. We have been socialized in a leadership paradigm that is very not effective for systemic change, that is designed to keep the system the same. And so we learn, we grow in our business, and we reach the level that we are right now within that paradigm. But if you want to change the system, you have to challenge that leadership paradigm too. That included, and be willing to challenge yourself too. All your whatever limiting beliefs and how you buy in really into the ideas and beliefs that the system drop on you.
Yeah. Beautifully said. And I think my previous guest actually last week was talking about, when you have position and you have power and then you have a platform, those people are the ones who can then influence change, as in shift the dial, particularly in gender equality and equality in all areas. And I love what you've added there too, is also, you've got the genuine, authentic storyline. You've got the previous oppression. You've got the statistics from your demographic who have been marginalized and not supported in their opportunities because of, whether it's white supremacy or whatever that factor was. I love that. So it's that conscious knowing that actually says, you know what, I'm actually in a position now that I can intentionally be a change agent, all right? I can start shaking up the system. And it requires that confidence and that boldness to go, you know what, I don't have to ask permission anymore. I agree with you what you said there, Virginia, that, the traditional leadership model has then people, you're leading an organization or a group to be as collaborative and engaged, whatever, to do what you're assigned to do. Whereas the change agents are actually going, I can do that, but I can also challenge the status quo. I can start shaking up the system. So do you have specific traits that define a system shaker, for example, that what you think actually says, you know what, this is how you're going to really instigate meaningful change?
Absolutely. And that has been, I think my life work is to understand how systems change, how human system change, and that I'm talking system can be anything from, your family to your team, to your whole organization, to your industry, to the whole society. All systems have similar characteristics, and there are like kind of universal laws that keeps systems to work the way they do and to propel them to change. And I've been studying that for many, many years, as well as what we well-known history changers, history shapers. I mean, people in history that have actually make such a systemic change that they shift history and the direction of history. And from those studies and my own experience, personal experience, but also working with system shakers, there are 4 things that anybody knows. And this is important because we have a lot of people, women in particular, and women that come from that kind of groups or backgrounds or belong to those communities, that they have a strong calling. I mean, they say, like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of having to lead like a man to be respected or to be considered, that I fit the position of leadership. I'm tired of people telling me that doesn't work like that here, or that's never going to work, or, like you're too soft, or, you're too feminine. And I'm tired of all that. And I'm tired of seeing the oppressions that I grew up experiencing, seeing them being reproduced in subtle and even not so subtle ways in the system that I'm leading, when now I'm in the position that I can do something about it. The problem is that many of them are well-intended. They have like the passion and the drive, but they don't know how to go about it, and the tendency is like, I get angry, I get frustrated, I start using the same leadership styles that got me here and that got us here to change it. And you cannot use the same, it's like Einstein saying, you cannot use the same mindset to solve a problem. You cannot use the same mindset that created the problem in the first place. But we don't know better, because nobody teaches a different way of leading. And nobody teaches a way of leading a system, a complex system. We lead organization as if they were machines, like, okay, if I understand the parts, if I have all the information, bring me more data, I have to plan better, more in detail, give better instructions, be more commanding, more directive, so people do exactly what I want them to do, so things are different. It never works. It never works. But we don't know better. We don't know what is the alternative. So the traits, what it takes to actually change the system, are 4 things. And these are important, because if you're brave enough to say, like, I'm going to shake this system from the core, and you fight the system will always fight back. And you need to be ready for that, because I've seen thousands, and I work with social movement all over the world, and I've seen thousands of leaders, well-intended, passionate, driven, and all that get literally crushed by the system because they're not prepared for it. So you need 4 things. You need a strong calling, and that's, you cannot make it up. You cannot say, like, borrow it from someone, saying, like, who is so-and-so doing, and I'm going to do the same because apparently it's been successful, like, it has to come from you. And that's why I say women that come from those marginalized backgrounds, we already have that calling. Is there. So a strong calling is important. It's absolutely essential, and it's the beginning, because you have to be so passionate, so committed to you with your mission and your purpose, that you have to be willing to do whatever it takes by the system for it. If you're not convinced, it's gonna be very persuasive. And you're gonna drop it, anytime.
You don't have that fire. You can have a quick spurt and you can do some change, but eventually you'll get challenged, or it's too hard, or whatever. You don't have that ongoing fire.
Exactly. And you're gonna be like, forget it, I'm not made for this. And it's not necessarily true. It's just like you didn't have that level of commitment to figure it out. Because you can, but it's gonna require some work. So that's the first one. Nobody can give you that. The other 3, yes, we can help you with that. The second one is a strong brand and a strong brand and a strong message. This is what your guest from last week was saying, that you have the influence, you have the platform, you have the resource, you get known outside for being the face of this mission that you have, this vision of change that you have. And your message is so strong and so compelling that people can quickly say, I agree with that, identify with that, I'm going to join you. That is not the same thing as I'm going to follow you on Instagram. No, it's I'm going to join you in your cause because your message talks to me directly. And so you need a strong brand and a strong message to have, because you cannot change the world by yourself or the system by yourself. You need a movement. You need a community. You need a tribe. And they need to find you. So that's how you use it. But again, that's important, but not enough. The third thing that you need is a systemic leadership skills, a complexity science-based strategy, and a systemic leadership skills. And this is why that's important. We were talking about traditional leadership paradigm and how that traditional leadership that is very masculine, that is very patriarchal, is very based on white supremacy, is designed around power dynamics. And it needs to keep the power dynamics in place for it to be able to work. What you're trying to do is to challenge and to change and to transform the dynamics of powers in the system. So you cannot just lead the same way everybody's leading, because that's the way to sustain the system in place, to keep the status quo. You have to change your whole paradigm about leadership. And this means that you have to understand the system you're working and you're trying to transform. You have to understand all the complexities of it, how all the parts and elements, factors, dimension of the system interact with each other, how each one of them affects and is affected by everything else, and how to tap into the collective intelligence and creativity of the system to evolve all the system, to engage everyone into thinking of solutions and to try them out. So your role as a leader, if you see, goes from I'm the one in charge, I have all the answers, I'm going to tell you what to do, I'm going to tell you how to do it, I'm going to convince you or persuade you to follow me, to believe in me, to become a leader that is a facilitator of systemic change, a leader that their main mission is to create the conditions for the whole system to work on changing itself, to create the conditions for diversity, for innovation, for creativity, for collaboration, to remove obstacles from innovation and to stay out of the way. And to really let the system do what it does best, which is solving complex problems. We cannot, we have, as human, we have limited capacity for complexity. We have only a brain, a human brain, a mammal brain. But together, as a system, we can figure things out. So the role of the leader is not to have the best answers, it's actually to ask the best questions, is to provoke the system into thinking, how can I evolve? How can I change into something else? So that's something that you can learn to understand, to develop a complexity-based strategy for change, and to develop the leadership skills that a systemic leader has to lead a system. Not a thing, not a machine, not a company, but a system. And the fourth requirement, this is also challenging and also can be learned, is to develop what I call an indomable mindset. Indomable is a Spanish word that loosely translates to impossible to domesticate. And what it means is that for you to be able to lead systemic change, you need to become the person that can sustain a fight against the system. Because as I said a moment ago, if you fight the system will fight back.
Yes.
The system wants to stay the same. The system wants to keep the status quo. If you're willing to go on a fight, you have to be ready, mentally and emotionally ready to fight, to sustain that fight, to hold your ground. So I've seen this is one of the things that I've seen the most. You can have the strategy, you have the brand, you have the message, you have, your mission, your calling very clear. But if you don't manage your mind and you don't manage your ego, all the emotions that your thoughts, your limiting belief, your own, what I call colonized mind, meaning all the beliefs that you and the stories you tell yourself that you learn from being socialized that way.
Yeah.
You tell yourself about who you are, what is true and what is not true, and what is possible and not possible. Those thoughts and all the emotions that create are the ones that's going to stop you. So we really need to learn how to understand our minds, how to manage our thoughts, to challenge what our mind is telling us about ourselves, about the world, and about what is possible, and to manage our emotions and our ego in that way. So nothing. When you manage your mind and your ego that way, really nothing and nobody has power over you. It's really that is complicated, but it's also that simple.
I love it. I love it. And so beautifully communicated. I'm hoping our listeners have been taking some notes. You can always re-watch or re-listen and really capture them because they were so clearly explained. It reminded me last week I watched just on Netflix the movie called Naiad, and it was one of the American ladies who'd swum from Cuba to the States and how it was just so amazing because it was just watching this journey, multiple attempts to the point that on the last time everybody quit. And she's there going, why? Why would you quit? I'm going to keep doing it even when everything seemed wrong because she believed in her. You've got to get to that stage where you believe despite the criticism, beside the people saying it's risky, they'll feel unsafe, they won't be comfortable with the risk, they won't be comfortable with other things. And so it was a classic example of all of that, sort of showing that to be able to do things that other people haven't done or to be able to do things in a new way means that you need to be comfortable in potential failure, comfortable that, yes, there will be risk. It's calculated risk, not that we're encouraging everyone just to be risky, but it will be trying things in a different way, in a new way, and supporting that. I love what you also said about the collective minds as well, that it does take a village, that's right. We're a bit arrogant if we think we're just a solo entity trying to, think things through and manage things, whereas it's the collective, the diversity, which we know, which will really help us. So how does embracing feminist and systemic thinking that we've been talking about in leadership benefit actually, not only your communities, your businesses, but actually the world? How does it become advantageous for us to embrace this kind of thinking?
Well, let's talk about a feminist perspective, for instance. I mean, feminism has been understood in many ways, and there are many schools of feminism and many different branches, if you want to, through history. But the way I understand it, feminism is just a philosophy. It's a lens that you use to identify power dynamics.
Yes,
that's what it is. Really, is the capacity to identify how power dynamics work in your community, in your society, in your country, and in your culture, how they work, and what needs to change. What powers dynamics are keeping us playing small, oppressed, invisibilized? What is affecting the world, and how this power dynamic is hindering some people from thriving, from being themselves, from trying what they are here to do, to fulfill their mission or their purpose, and how power dynamics are hindering also or preventing us from becoming more innovative, from creating more space for collaboration and innovation and empathy and et cetera, et cetera. So It's all about developing those lenses. And like, how can I understand and perceive quickly where there is a power dynamic in play that needs to be changed, and change into what? That is the feminist perspective. And so if you think about it, we all benefit from it. From in our personal life, but also if we all have those lenses and we can all identify when there is a difference in power that is detrimental to some people and to the society, and we can recognize it and know how to change it, this will be a way better world than it is.
Yes.
So that's the feminist perspective, and that's why it's so useful. It's not about becoming a feminist and going on the street, and it's not about only fighting for specific things. It's about a philosophy. It's as I was saying, it's a paradigm. It's a way of understanding the world.
Equality thinking. It's like we all should be equal.
Exactly. So that's the feminist perspective. And the systemic perspective, or the system thinking perspective, is another paradigm shift. Because it's about changing the way we understand how the world works, how we work, how we interact with each other, what is that how the system works. From centuries, science has explained, like Newton started many years ago, 100 years ago, when we were all wondering how this work, explain the universe. And Newton, I'm going to oversimplify things, but Newton said, okay, I'm going to explain the world and the universe. The world and the universe is like a clock. It's like a machine. If we understand the parts, we understand the whole. So what we need is more information and more data and more planning and more details to understand the whole, to understand what is the part that we need to remove and replace. What is the part that is not working? So we fix it and everything works perfectly. That works. Newton was a physicist. That worked with machines. That worked in a lab that you can freeze whatever you're working on. That worked with things that are machine-like systems. But humans, like forest, like the ecology, like the climate change, like the stock market, for instance, are totally unpredictable and uncontrollable. We can only aspire to understand how we work and function, but we cannot be controlled or predicted. That Newtonian paradigm of the world, that was the one that informed management and leadership styles and paradigms, are informed by that. By a science that is linear, that is like, if you do A, then B, and then C will happen, and then we end up with D. And in life, it never happens that way. All the frame logs that we have, like we do the strategic planning at the beginning of the year or every 5 years, especially every 5 years. And people say like, well, in 5 years, we're going to do this, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and then we're going to end up here. But then COVID happened, and then, the market changed, and then we have Gen Zers, and then
it's just a guide. It's a guide that needs to be constantly reassessed and modified, because that's right. Those people who have a 20-year plan or something, it's like, well, that's a guide, but it should be updated every year. If you're not assessing and monitoring and responding to change, then you're stuck. I agree with you. You're stuck in this fixed model. And it's kind of like a life is a formula. And that's right, if you do this and this. Now, that might have worked when things were a lot more constant, and there's nothing wrong with that in history. But now we have absolutely everything's unpredictable, isn't it?
Exactly. But look at the irony, because we can't understand that at the deep level. If we listen to our intuition, we know that that's true. But our brain, human brain, totally normal, needs prediction and needs certainty, right? I mean, we want to be certain about things. And we think, and we are being taught to believe that if we collect a lot of information and we plan carefully, we can predict and control the future, and we can predict and control everybody else. That's not true. We know it's not true, but we still work with that paradigm.
Well, you want it. Yeah, that's right. You crave it. Most people crave safety and security. And that
we
comes
fool
with
ourselves.
Yes.
We lie ourselves thinking that because I want it, then this is the way to do it and I'm going to get it. And the irony is that if I ask you, let's say you're pregnant, and I ask you to say like, okay, can you please give me a detailed plan on how you're going to guarantee the success that you're going to raise a person that is going to be a great citizen and he will never get in trouble? You will be like, are you kidding me? I don't even know the sex of this baby, let alone know what's going to happen with his life or, or her life in the future. We don't do that with kids, with humans, but we think that we can do it with a collective, that we can do it with a company, a business, a society, a country. It's like, yeah, I'm going to plan for the next 20 years and let you know exactly how I'm going to get there. That's totally, it's really insane when you think about it. But that's the way we work, and that's the way we've been taught that that's what leadership is about. It's about planning, predicting, and controlling the result. Systemic leadership, or system thinking, the system thinking paradigm to leadership is not about predicting and controlling, it's about understanding. So going back to the let's say the motherhood or raising a child, how we raise a child. If you think about it, I read like, because I'm a nerd, I read like 20 books on how to raise children and, child development, the brain, blah, 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 all the things. I got tons of advice. None of them work because my child decided to be unique, like every single child in the world. Yeah. And all my ideas, I'm going to do this and this and that, change in a blink. He turned 3 months old and he threw away all my books. And I'm like, all right, now I'm in the wild now. This is improvising. But this is the way you raise a child, actually. You try, you develop new strategies, and you see, does it work? It doesn't work. If it works, you keep doing it until they change the questions and you have to come up with new answers. If it doesn't work, you stop doing that and you try something else. And so raising a child is like changing the system in some way, because you're shaping a system that is a child, a human. You're influencing the system that is your child. It's not in your control. That system that is the child also has the influence of the school, the religious community, the other family members, the kids, the neighborhood, whatever. So you're just one factor. You're the leader, and you can influence the direction that child is taking, but you cannot control it and predict it. So the best way for you to go is by observing, understanding how systems change, understanding what all the parts that are involved, what else is influencing that child, and then doing your best in trying new strategies and giving yourself room and self-compassion to say, like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I have a good idea of where I want to go. And so we're going to go together and see what works and what doesn't work. Now I'm going to adjust to your changes. It's not the other way around. I'm adjust to your changes. And I, as the leader, adjust to the changes in my system and try new things and experiment. I give room and also listen to my child. Is what works for you. How it works for you if we want to accomplish this and we need to do it together, what will be the best way for this to work for both of us? It's very participatory in many ways. That's the most successful experience so far, at least. It's very highly participatory. It's engaging everyone in a shared vision. And then give room for experimentation and for adjusting and for adaptation and for going. You have to grow and you have to change with the system that you're trying to change at the same time. Like we grow as mothers with our children. As they grow, we also grow. We have to. We have no option. It's the same thing as a leader. So a systemic perspective is to understand how systems work, how they change, what are the general laws that help the system to change their direction, and then what is the best strategies for me as a leader to influence that direction? So it goes in a way in the direction of, more a just, included, inclusive, fair society, for instance. I want to push it in that direction. But then the details, they're up to the system, and you have to work with it, not on it only, but with it.
Oh my goodness, I could listen to you all day, and so could our listeners. Just so much information. I love that. It's not just rinse and repeat. It's adapting. It's being immersed in that environment and really exploring. I love that. I'm thinking I've raised 5 children, and that's it. A lot of people, when I said, you've got a formula, I'm like going, oh my gosh, like so many. It wasn't the same. Like there's constants in your family, in your culture, in your values, and things that are just the same. But other times they're very different individuals, and so what would work for one doesn't work for another, and you have to be able to adapt and modify. Otherwise, you just get frustrated. I also love what you finished there with saying that, we need to bend as well. We need to learn. I've grown so much in the breadth of, how I can understand different behaviors, and because of the way other people think, the way that other people respond to things, it's actually extended me. If I stayed in, well, that's just the way I think and that's the way I behave, I would have been very limited. I'd love to finish off by you sharing a little bit more about your, and I'll have to pronounce it properly, Indomable mindset. Is it and how it can really help us all. We want tools for personal growth. We want tools to overcome challenges. So just share a little bit about that to close.
Well, the Indomable mindset is my definition of the kind of mindset that a history shaper or a system shaker at least has to have in order to really accomplish what they want, their purpose. And it has 7 traits, but the most, 7 traits like resilience, like self-confidence with humble self-confidence, creativity, a creative and growing mindset. And yes, a lot of leaders already have that. But an Indomable mindset have 2 specific traits that few leaders have, really. One is a critical mind, a true critical mind. And a true critical mind is not about just being skeptical of the news, what other people say, what they do. A true critical mind is the one that is skeptical of the stories your mind is telling you. And it's really see through the bullshit that you tell yourself. And to be able to decolonize your mind, to understand what part of your ideas are really yours, and what huge amount of ideas that you have, beliefs and etc., are not yours, but you're being socialized. You have been conditioned to believe that they're yours and they're true. So true critical mind is the one that is willing and capable of challenging everything, including that you think you're certain of.
Including your own bullshit.
Seeing through that bullshit, especially the one that you tell yourself, which is a lot. Is a lot. So that's the critical mind. And the other one is the ego mastery. And ego is a part of our personality, is a part of our psyche, is normal, is the part of our psyche that help us to define an identity and protect us from threats, from, keep us alive. So we need it. It's fine. But when you don't manage your ego is managing you. And that part of you that is always afraid, that is always, paranoid, to be honest, becomes paranoid and is like, it needs to protect your identity so much from threats that are mostly imaginary. That part of you, if you don't manage it and it manages you, what it does is that it keeps you playing small. Because it's like a little, consider this, is part of the primitive brain. That work in the caves, when we were in the caves, that our primitive brain was telling you, just breathe and stay in the cave. Don't do anything because something might kill you. So the best way to stay alive is to seek pleasure at all costs. So we eat a lot now, and we have a lot of sugar and alcohol and drugs and Netflix and social media and all that, because that creates pleasure and that's safe. Get pleasure as fast as possible, immediate rewards and everything. Avoid any kind of pain, real or imaginary, physical or emotional. That's going to kill you, because that brain doesn't make the difference between the pain that we suffer when an animal actually attacks us and is biting us and is killing us from the pain that we experience when we're going to have, when we're going to do like public speaking. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, pain is pain. It's going to kill you. You're going to die. And it's that over dramatic. The thing is that the first one is true. You need to avoid that pain because it might kill you. Public speaking is not going to kill you. If you don't make the distinction and you let your ego to command and to manage you, you're going to stop yourself from doing things that you need to do in order to grow and to evolve. The ego is not designed to help you evolve. It's designed to keep you alive. And the best way it does it is by stopping you. Like, just breathe. Let's do that for the rest of our life. Breathe. But if you want to evolve, if you want to do something that is daring, that is different, that is take some risk, even if it's, the perception of risk, maybe it's not really that bad, but the perception of risk, your ego is going to do whatever it takes to stop you. So you have to manage it so it does what it does best, that is keeping you literally alive. And then when you're with your prefrontal cortex, meaning your, rational brain, with your adult brain, with your mature brain, you make the decisions as an adult of what you want to do. In spite of those emotions, in spite of those fears, what is the right decision? So managing your ego helps you to do the right thing under pressure. The right thing for yourself, for your company or your business or your organization, and for society, even under pressure. That is when the ego gets crazy. And that is those two traits that you can learn, and is part of the things that I coach my clients to do, is to develop that Indomable mindset. Those two traits are really the key to make sure that nothing and nobody has real power over you, and you are in control of your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior, and therefore your results. So they're absolutely essential.
Yeah. Oh, so much wisdom shared today. Thank you so much, Virginia. It's just been one of the best interviews I've had. Like, seriously, I'm just going to share that and put that out there. Just been so fascinating. I just think on every element, I can imagine our listeners now imagining different situations. I've had those situations, even raising kids. You want them to approve of you. You want them to love it. And sometimes you want to rescue them because your ego says, oh, you need me, gives you self-worth. I almost feel like, tattoo my name on your head, mum's the best, whereas you get to those moments that you go, I'm going to have to let you struggle at this time because you need to learn these things, and I have to be okay with that. I need to realize that you're not, you don't make me a better or worse person just because you're there. It means that I can then, grow as myself as well. Even raising children, you're raising them so they don't need you as adults. They love you as adults. They enjoy you being around, but they don't need you because you've allowed them to become the person that they are, and you've then grown into the person that you are as equal wholes, and constantly evolving. And I think it's the same principles for business. You have to be comfortable to actually not always rescue as the boss, actually just set up frameworks that people can, engage, learn, grow, do all the things that we've been talking about. So much information. I want our listeners to add in your comments in the chat. We would love to get back to you. Nothing is too crazy. Just pop it in wherever you are. If you're on one of our audio platforms, or if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn Live, wherever you're watching or listening to this episode, engage with us. That's what it's all about. We would love to get in contact with you if you've got a question, if we can help you in any way. Thank you so much, Virginia Lacayo, for being on the program today. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. We look forward to sharing with you again in our next episode. Thanks, Virginia.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Women's Biz Podcast. I'm Annie Gibbins, founder and CEO of Women's Biz Global. And if you would like to fast track your future success, pop on over to womensbizglobal.com. where you can find out how our coaching, media and publishing opportunities are helping women just like you to become and be seen as the trusted authorities in their niche. Inquire today and start reining in the abundance you desire.